Good afternoon and welcome to this Dibble webinar on how Love Notes fits into PrEP funding. My name is Kay Reed and I'm the Executive Director of the Dibble Institute, and I'm coming to you from Berkeley, California. And I'm really pleased you're all here. A couple of thoughts as we begin. If you can't hear this broadcast, the easiest thing is to log in and log out to get back in and be heard. We also have some materials for you in the control panel that we're going to be talking about today, an issue brief, a case study, and also a crosswalk between the PrEP skills and the PrEP adult preparation topics and Love Notes. So those are for you to have. And I will be joined in a little bit by my two colleagues, Janelle Zachary, who's our outreach coordinator and also a training specialist. And what's very special, Janelle has many special parts, but one special part that we'd like for today is that she's actually taught Love Notes on the ground to young people. So she brings a really great perspective. And Dr. Rachel Savicek-Luxton, who is our training and research coordinator director. And Rachel studied our programs when she was getting her graduate degree at Auburn. So we're really thrilled to have them both with us, and I'll be introducing them in a bit. Kim is our engineer extraordinaire. She's behind the scenes. And so Kim, can we get to the next slide? So this is for Janelle. Janelle, pop on in.
Hello, Kay. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kim. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. Thank you for allowing us to spotlight some of the activities that we have planned for you today. So as you're seeing the screen, we're asking you, before we get started and all of the other information that we came ready to share for you, is what is your observation? But before we ask you to drop an answer into the question box, if you can locate your control panel, maybe it's to the left of your screen or to the right of your screen, there is a question box. If you could simply reply to my question and you can answer inside of the question box, that would help me to see your response. So we have a question for you, and we simply want to know, what is your observation? We'd like for you to fill in the blank. In a moment, I'm getting ready to show you a slide or a screen or a question that indicates how would you fill in this statement. The relationships of the youth that I work with are like, fill in the blank. Now, what I'm looking for here is maybe a thought or a symbol or an idea, but I'm looking for one word. I'm looking for one word that helps you to fill in this statement. The relationships of the youth that I work with are like. And Kim, if you don't mind, you can populate that next slide for me, please. And I'll give you a few moments for you to decide. Yes, hello.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Valerie says they're like sponges. Relationships of the youth I work with today are like sponges.
Excellent. And a few other thoughts that have come to mind while we're waiting for some of your other responses to come through is that we've heard things like roller coasters. The relationships of the youth that I work with are like topsy-turvy and windy. We've heard other examples very similar to relationships of the youth that I work with are like race cars, start fast and end fast. Now, as we're thinking about this, and before I move forward, Kay, did you have anything else that you'd like to offer here?
Yes, just the people have said they're like sponges, they're like erasers that you can quickly over with. Otherworldly is another response we're seeing.
Excellent. And very much like some of the responses that are coming through, and we appreciate your responses coming through, we also want to share with you, this is an activity that we would also have as an energizer for some of the program participants. Only with them, we are going to give them sheets of paper with crayons, markers, or any other coloring utensils so they can show you or draw or create examples of how they view relationships of what they observe around them. So some of the examples that we've contrived from participants, very similar to the answers that you mentioned in the question box there, thank you very much, are like this, very much like what I answered before. Kim, next slide, please. Relationships today are like race cars, the fast lane starts fast and ends fast. Next slide, Kim. Or like a finely tuned race car, you have to work at it to keep it running. And so again, these are just energizers, and this is one of many that we have available in this program to help extend the conversation beyond the session at hand. So if this conversation or this thought or activity very shortly piqued your interest, we're excited and we have more to share for you today. We'll get into the contents of Love Notes in a moment because the program in and of itself has a plethora of offerings to engage multiple learning styles available for the demographics of the youth that you serve. And what is extra special is that it has a component where you can apply cultural competencies where applicable. But first, I'm having Kay come back on so she can introduce a little bit more about the Dibble Institute and information therein.
Thanks, Janelle. For those of you who don't know, so by the way, the final entry into this contest we just had, and this is actually how the Love Notes program starts, is with this energizer. Camille said young relationships today are very fluid, and isn't that true? Yeah, so thank you all for participating. So the Dibble Institute is a national independent nonprofit organization. There's nobody behind the screen. We're just ourselves. We're rooted in the values of research, of inclusivity, and of service. We estimate what we do is we translate research into teaching tools that then we make available to others who they teach the youth. So we are not direct service providers. We're a nonprofit curriculum publisher in this space of relationship education. Last year, our clients, we conservatively estimate, reached over 126,000 young people all across the country through a variety of funding streams, but most prevalently teen pregnancy prevention, of the various flavors of teen pregnancy prevention funding streams. Our mission is to help young people gain agency in their intimate relationships. It's not something that many people do. It can be difficult to talk about these topics with young people, but we found a way to make it interesting and engaging and safe for the adults who are having the conversation, with some very profound impacts that we'll get into in a little bit. Next slide, Kim. So just a little bit about our background, because people say, where'd you get that weird name Dibble, and what's going on? So this is Charlie and Helen Dibble, who are our founders. And to make a very long story short, I'm happy to do the long story. I love the long story, but for today, the short story is that Charlie saw issues with his young friends that had to do with either their lack of confidence in being able to create long-lasting, happy relationships, or when their parents' marriages or relationships went foundered, how it impacted the young people. So he was an engineer, and he said, I'll put that on my to-do list. Let's go. And so that's how we got started, of translating this work of translational, practical work that we do in this space of relationship education. So I'd like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Rachel Savasek-Luxton, who is going to take us through the research that we have on Love Notes. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Kay. We can go to that next slide there. There we go. Thank you. So as Kay said, we translate research into teaching tools. And as an organization, one of our key values lies within research and the value of research, which means that not only do we make sure our programs are based in research, but we believe in the importance of having them evaluated at the highest and most rigorous levels. So Love Notes is a comprehensive relationship education program that went through a rigorous 5-year randomized control trial. And I'll try not to get too bogged down in the weeds in terms of what that means, because you know, I know how that can sometimes be not as fun, but still very, very, very important there. So the randomized control trial, for those of you who might not know, that is in research kind of the gold standard. So what that means is when we look at differences in outcomes over time for youth who received a program versus who didn't receive a program, what we can attribute any differences to is to the program, because at the starting point, basically all groups are equal, right? They're all starting at the same level, and the one thing that's uniquely different amongst them is whether or not they received this program. So when we talk about the RCT that Love Notes went through, the researchers at the University of Louisville, what they really wanted to look at and study was to compare pregnancy prevention approaches, specifically looking at comprehensive relationship education to comprehensive sex ed or pregnancy prevention. And under this funding and this grant, they really wanted to test the hypothesis and the belief that when we embed comprehensive sex education within this context of larger healthy relationship programming, that we're going to see better results, right? It's going to have a bigger impact. And before we get into the findings, I do want to talk a little bit about the sample. So the youth that were in this study included just under 1,500 vulnerable male and female youth, ages 14 to 19. The participants in the study were recruited from community-based organizations, the majority of them coming from low-income households. And we see kind of a variety within that sample of including some foster youth, refugee youth, and immigrant youth. So just a little bit kind of about the population that they were serving and how and where the study was tested. So with that, right, let's, kind of burying the golden nugget there, kind of making you wait for a second. What did they find? They hypothesized that this comprehensive relationship ed would be more impactful. Was that the case? And if we go to the next slide, you are going to see from that chart that it was more effective than the traditional pregnancy prevention approaches of past times. So when you look at this chart, you can see that that broader approach got significant outcomes in several areas, and no other federally evaluated program got 5 or more positive outcomes. So that's really exciting to see how Love Notes, not just any comprehensive relationship education program, but Love Notes had this significant impact on these youth. Specifically, those who were sexually active were more likely to use condoms and other forms of contraception. For those who were sexually active, they had sex less frequently. They were more likely to not have had sex recently, so they're having sex less often. And for those teens who had not started having sex before the program, they were more likely to remain abstinent post-program, so they were less likely to have engaged in sexual activity. And y'all might be wondering, okay, why did we skip number 2 here? And I have a good reason for that, because I want to really highlight it in just a moment and the really exciting findings that we found from that. And that is that Love Notes is one of only 6 programs on the evidence-based list that is demonstrated to be effective in pregnancy prevention. So how effective was Love Notes? If we go to the next slide, you can see just how powerful it was. This is the pregnancy outcomes. And when you look at the impact that Love Notes had, the youth who participated in this program at 1 year, so 12 months after programming, they were 46% less likely to have a pregnancy or to have experienced a pregnancy compared to those in the control group, and were significantly less likely than even those in the traditional kind of pregnancy prevention to have experienced a pregnancy. So that really goes to show and highlight the benefits of this comprehensive approach. So how does Love Notes relate to the adult preparation topic? So we see how exciting it is, all these amazing findings, that gold standard to achieve this evidence-based status. How does it also correlate to adult preparation topics? On the next slide, you're going to see just kind of how exhaustive this is. And also, I want to talk a little bit about the research that specifically correlates to some of these adult prep topics. So what you're going to see with Love Notes, and also if you go to the handouts kind of area in your control panel, you're going to see that there's an adult preparations topics handout in there. And that's going to more, I guess, directly and explicitly talk about how love notes and the content and lessons correlate to the adult preparation topics. But broadly speaking, there are 9 lessons covering healthy relationships, 2 lessons covering adolescent development. There are parent-child communication activities in every single lesson of love notes and options for different types and different ways to connect. We have 3 lessons addressing educational and career success and 7 lessons addressing healthy life skills. So what's some of the research that's coming out? It's not officially published yet, but it's in the works and we're really excited. And I want to go ahead and give you a little bit of what that is. What this new research that's coming out is showing is that youth who receive love notes are better able to identify warning signs of unhealthy relationships, are more proactive decision makers in their day-to-day lives and their romantic relationships. They're also having more hope for positive relationships, improved well-being, more sharing and improvement kind of in those relationships with parents and caregivers. And we're also seeing less destructive behaviors in their relationships. So all of these new and exciting findings that are coming out are all directly tied to these core prep components. So I wanted to make sure that we took a moment to highlight that. So this is the research that's on Love Notes. This is the lessons and how they correlate to those prep topics and some of the research that's coming out on that. But I want to go ahead and turn it back over to Jonelle so that she can go through the content of the program a little more explicitly with you, kind of in greater detail.
Rachel, that is very exciting, and I hope you all found it very exciting as well. Further, you might be asking, okay, well, show us the program and what's available in the program. Well, I'm excited to share with you. Here's a quick overview in this next slide of the Love Notes 4.0 program. In this overview, you're going to see the main sections highlighted of Love Notes. You see sections 1 through 4. These section breaks are not exactly what we would have listed in the table of contents of the program, but we wanted to share this with you in the event that you request a review copy. It will be helpful for you to see how the program is organized. So that way you can also make additional notes that the order of the sections are very deliberate. How so? The lessons within each section is meant to build upon each other. And each section, section 1 is meant to build on section 2, which is meant to build on section 3, and so on. So if you draw your eyes to the placement of where we've placed section 4 at the very end of the program, at this point, we take up sexual decision-making, STI, pregnancy prevention, after your participants have gotten 3 sections, for us that's 10 lessons, on developing a greater understanding of themselves, healthy relationships defined, and communication skill building. We encourage young people to bring knowledge of all of those areas of self and skills for healthy relationships into their sexual decision making. And so you might be asking, well, what lessons are within each section? I'm glad you asked. On this next slide, we'll break it down section by section. So section 1, this section is all about knowing myself. This section is based on the premise that healthy relationships start with the individual. So the healthier that one is, the healthier their relationships are likely to be. We build upon that first lesson by asking youth to consider that good relationships are not just luck. And by understanding themselves, lesson 2 of knowing yourself, by understanding oneself and continuing to develop oneself, those are key components to developing those healthy relationships. Inside of these lessons, we will have it packed with some preliminary goal setting and some personality characteristic assessments to help add language and agency to youth starting the program. Then we get into more deeper discussion and introspective work through the use of a participant journal. We do have free writing journal components within the program where youth are asked to consider some of the topics that we are talking about in session. And so my expectations really gets them talking, so much so it helps them to help create some thought around what are relationship expectations? What are some of the preliminary goals that you may have for your future? And how might that impact friendships and or romantic relationships? Further, in section 2, as you'll see in this next slide, is that we have section 2 compacted with 5 lessons. It is the fullest part of the program, if you will. And so we have it broken apart with the first 3 lessons, 4 through 6 here, that are all around defining what healthy relationships are. Now, we know that with healthy relationships, we also have to define them for what they are, but also how they develop. And so we focus section 2 on what lays foundations for a healthy relationship. And we even talk about the chemistry of attraction when increasing the understanding of the powerful feelings that new relationships can generate. And so the goal here is to assist young people in handling their attractions wisely. So together with educators and the program, the activities that we have in these lessons can help participants to explore why pacing their involvement more slowly as they learn about a person with time can be a healthier choice to go. Now, you heard me mention activities. So I want to give you an example of other activities that can expand beyond just audio-visual and discussion-based energizers, similar to what we did when we started this call today. I want to show you in this next slide that some of the activities that we do are around creativity, kinesthetic learning. And so we have a sculpting activity from lesson 6, Is It a Healthy Relationship?, that gives different relationship types. From there, we ask you to sculpt or use their creativity or their imagination to create what they think a relationship of this type represents. So what you see before you is an actual sculpture that a participant created. And what you can see off to the side in the bullet points are their descriptors for what they've created. This is almost like a think, pair, share activity where not only we give the participants a chance to create, as you can see, like the pink bed and the spirals, it gives descriptors here. Over on the side of the screen, he's in the pink bed throwing money and jewelry at her. Our girl only thinks about what her boyfriend buys her. In return, she has gifts for gifts. She has sex. She spends lots of time looking the way he wants, fancy hairdos. The spirals coming from her head represent inner insecurity and turmoil. And the gifts are nice, but she feels deep down there's nothing else. This particular activity or exercise is one of 6 relationship types where we explore 2 contrasting relationship types. This is one side of the spectrum that highlights a relationship that's only focused on these areas. In the next slide, you'll see a contrasting relationship type that is it's actually attraction on many levels. What might a relationship like that look like? And so you have another group of participants that are also sculpting or using their creativity to generate what they think this type of relationship would generate. And so again, as you see on the screen, you see that this couple is on a date walking in the mall, brought partner flowers. That's what the mini marshmallows on a toothpick are representative of. They are spending time together and getting to know each other. They are having fun, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. That's what the pink heart is. And the rainbow color sticks under them represents friendship, to love, and so many levels of communication. So again, you're giving your participants a chance to share out what they've created from being asked to consider different relationship types out of these lessons. Further in section 2, as a continuation, on the next slide, you'll also see that we end out or round out section 2 with important topics on how to recognize and become aware signs of disrespectful and abusive relationships and how to exit safely. And so we pack the lesson not only with definitions, but resources from a national level, and we give cultural adaptations or localized adaptations for individuals or organizations to bring in additional resources that may be able to directly help as resources for the participants in your area. Last but not least, a core concept of the program in lesson 8 is decide, don't slide, which is a low risk approach to relationships. Like I mentioned before, navigating new friendships or new attractions can pose a high risk situation, as there may be decisions that may be faster. And so if we can ask youth to consider deciding, don't slide, it can help them consider a low risk approach to approaching their relationships. We round out section 2 and navigate into section 3 with communication skills for relationships. And so as you can see, we have 2 lessons here in this next slide that will showcase communications tips and skills to manage conflict management for healthy relationships, and additional skill building applications for also evaluating life in the digital age. You'll have to forgive me because one digital and technological adaptation that we've also used for the sculpting lesson that you saw in lesson 6, and some of the sculptures that some of our participants have created, is if there's this oversight of wanting to create, then they can do that activity reimagine using digital technologies. Show us a GIF or a meme that represents those relationship types. And so that's additional ways in which we can incorporate the use of digital technologies into the lesson building. Last but not least is the placement of section 4, where we talk about pregnancy and sexual decision making. Again, the sexuality section is placed after 10 full lessons of developing healthy selves, healthy relationships, so that youth can employ what they've learned to their sexual decision making and planning. And so again, we want to emphasize that with these lessons, we take 2 approaches with sexual decision making. We take a heart-based approach, is what you see in lesson 11, let's talk about sex, which is creating a definition and a meaningful context for timing, planning, pacing of sexual involvement. And lesson 12, let's plan for choices, which is the health-based portion of sexual decision making, where it's medically accurate, evidence-based information on the risks, protection, and the plan for one's intentions for the pacing, planning, and timing of sex based on their context of what that means for them. We want youth to make their own decisions that they can own, and we can offer those ways to reflect through utilization of the journal, the various activities leading in lessons up to this point, as well as we can encourage them to define for themselves that meaningful context of sex versus just following popular and peer culture. This program does not normalize sexual activity. It encourages delay for positive reasons and not just the negative risks of disease and pregnancy. And so again, we do make special call outs in our program for those who are in vulnerable populations. And so again, we give facilitation tips and additional technical assistance to help provide that support for organizations who have vulnerable populations of youth where sex was not always a choice. So I left that cliffhanger to leave it open for Rachel for how might we talk about that, and also the updated content that is that keeps Love Notes current and accurate. Rachel?
Thank you, Joe. I know I was getting very excited as you were talking about technology because, you know, one of the big important things too is that we keep our programs updated and the content within our programs updated. So if you go to the next slide, you're going to see some of the pieces that we have brought into the newest version of Love Notes. So in Love Notes 4.0, one of the things that we brought into this conversation and the discussion in the program itself is around sex trafficking and sex trafficking prevention. Unfortunately, we know that this is a prevalent issue in our country and beyond. So it was important that we're having the conversation with youth so that they can recognize some of those warning signs, and also find ways to heal, so that if they are in this circumstance, what supports can they have, what supports can they lean on to get out of that, and also how might they heal themselves so that they are better able to navigate or avoid a situation like this, especially with this prevalence of technology. So that leads me to the next point. I think as time has gone on, we have all seen just how prevalent technology is in all aspects of our lives. I laugh because for the longest time it was like, oh, you all probably have your phone within reach. I mean, we're having our presentation here on a webinar, and it's like, we went from the phones to the watches to everything. And we know that technology and communicating through technology and different social media apps is a primary way of communication amongst young people. So it's really important that we bring that into the conversation. So how do we communicate with one another digitally? What are we sharing online? How much do we want to share online? What might be the good and not so good things about this constant kind of access to one another and information? So that goes into that navigating relationships in the digital age. How are we communicating? What are we using our devices for? And also, again, with this constant kind of connectedness and access like never before to internet and information and whatever else it may be, we wanted to bring in this conversation of online pornography, because online pornography is so easily accessible. And I believe, trying to pull the stats back up from the back of my head, but in a study of young adults, it was like over 85% had said that they had seen digital pornography before the age of 18, because again, it's easily accessible, and not just easily accessible, but also just kind of built into the apps that we know youth are using. So helping them to be more intentional, I guess, users around technology and how they are bringing that into their lives and what they're choosing or not choosing to consume through their devices. The other thing that we know is really important to have conversations around is sexual assault. This has been a piece in Love Notes, but as information has come out, as more resources have come out, we have continued to kind of evolve along with that. So in 4.0, we go into more of what is sexual assault, what is not, or what is consent, what is not consent, what are some important resources to be made available for young people, how do we help them navigate these situations. And with that piece on consent, we have a bigger conversation again around consent, and not just consent in intimate relationships in the sense of physical, but also what are we sharing online? What does it mean? What is our kind of line, if you will, of what we're willing to share, and how that may or may not be shared with other people. So as times change, and as what youth are utilizing and the information that they are gathering and the experiences that they're having are changing, our programs are making sure to stay up to date using the youth voice, their experiences, as well as the research that's kind of supporting what is the best way to support and assist youth, and also what's important in terms of knowledge for them to be aware of, so that they can be active kind of agents in their own lives and feel empowered to make safe decisions with the information that they're gathering from the Love Notes program. So with that, let's hear a little bit more about what participants are saying. You're hearing a lot about our research, how the program is developed, how it's really exciting because we're staying up to date, and that's wonderful. But what are the actual participants of this program saying? So Joe.
Rachel, thank you so much. Don't just take our word for it, right? But I really appreciate that, because as Kay mentioned very early in the webinar, at the start of the webinar, I do have direct experience in facilitating and being, right boots on the ground, right in the middle of classrooms. And you all are hearing me from Jonelle Zachary in the professional sense. But the young people, very much will say JoJo or Big Sis. And so what are they saying? The overarching message that I've heard from anecdotal data that has been provided over the countless cohorts that I've had experience of serving was that I needed this program today. That is very powerful coming from a young person that said, I needed this today. I actually recall one senior male that had approached me and said, I needed this program my freshman year, and it spoke volumes. Again, the information that he shared that he was able to take and learn and utilize in his current romantic relationship, he said it could have helped him navigate romantic relationships wiser had he had this information earlier. And so again, it's not just enough for me to tell you lived of my own born experiences of implementing the program. What are others outside of my arena saying? There was a female Butler High School student who shared this, just learning about when you're in relationships, you have to wait 3 or 4 months to let the love chemical settle. That's an activity that we utilize with our program participants to help them understand the neuroscience behind strong attractions and managing them safely. The female participant went on to say, then you see the person for who they really are. And I've come to realize that in some of my own personal relationships. Again, taking the power of what we know from science, and Rachel shared that earlier, and making it palatable for the participants in the group to help them understand the ways in which, the body works and how they can use that information to help them make decisions that they can own for themselves. And that is what this participant has shared for her own personal relationships. Further, this direct quote comes from a student who actually received adult prep topics from their state. And this person says, I was able to ask some questions that would have been awkward to ask my parents. It has helped me realize that even if you're in a relationship for a long period of time, the use of condoms does not mean you or your loved one is cheating. It's just to protect the both of you from unwanted pregnancy and STIs. I love that you can go to class and be yourself, talk about anything. And so again, just as a reiteration, we do emphasize conversations that expand beyond the session in which the program content is being delivered through the use of what we call trusted adult connection activities. And so again, we have program participants select a trusted, responsible adult that they can have these conversations with so that they can have that connectivity to help them with some of their decision making and conversations outside of session. Further, we want to talk a little bit about some of the program flexibility options. If you're wondering, well, how can I make this work with some of the organizations that I work with, or how might they schedule this for better? What I have available for you on the next slide is opportunities for scheduling. There is flexibility on how your organizations move forward to serve youth. We do provide lesson guidance, and because this is an evidence-based program, we give guidance on how to conduct all of the lessons with all of the information intact. And as Rachel mentioned before, we do have some great facilitation tips that are available in some of the handouts that we have available for you, as they are helping to meet the needs of 5 out of 6 adult preparation to content. So we really try to provide the best guidance to help educate young people. In my experiences, I have had experiences of working with cohorts across quarters, multiple weeks, and even across multiple years. And so again, I've had opportunities to work in different scheduling options, and so we have ways to help assist. Cultural adaptations is that we know that you know the population of the youth that you're serving in your area. And so the program does offer a variety of ways to engage youth. And as you can see from some of the conversations that we've had up until this point, we incorporate digital technology. We incorporate the use of kinesthetic learning, audio, visual, physical movement, tactile movement, and the use of bringing in activities and engaging conversations for young people. So the different learning styles, we do offer teaching slides so that you educators can hit the visual components, photos and activities. We do give opportunities for critical thinking skills or logical learning styles, so that way they can assess scenarios that are offered from young people that are giving real scenarios about work, school, and home life situations. So youth can really apply some of the learnings to real-based scenarios. And we provide that social and solitary options. Social by the use of working in groups, and solitary learning styles by use of the participant workbook or journal that we have to accompany our instructor manuals. Now, if you are to request for a review copy, that journal or workbook is actually attached to the back of that review copy. So you'll have the opportunity to scan what's available for solitary work for those learning styles as well. Last but not least, we know that relevancy is a situation for our young people. They want it to be relevant. So here is just a quick snapshot of some of the relevant media options that we have available for them on this next slide, with the use of nothing other than music. So here's opportunities where we ask organizations to take a look at what do they think would resonate with their population of students more, and have the conversation to maybe show it and dive deeper into conversations about what the media representation is saying based on what they've learned. And so again, here are just 4 examples of the many examples that we have all throughout the program. And again, I wanted to take that opportunity to share that we are here to help support as partners, but also you have to know, like, well, what are some of the training options available? So Rachel, if you're available, might there be time to talk about some of those training options?
Definitely. It's so funny, Joe, because I was actually thinking, they might be wondering, you've gone through these adaptations and talked about lesson guidance and things, and it's like, well, how can I learn more about how to do that and how to, adapt or shift to meet the needs that I'm working with? And one way that they can learn those things is through training in the program. So the first thing I want to briefly talk about is our training of educators options. So a training of educators is where a DIBEL certified training specialist is training individuals to go out and facilitate the program in their community. Like I said, in these trainings, they get a lot of experience and information, insight from individuals who have facilitated the program. They have experience with that, so they can provide different tips and tricks for things that might work best depending on the setting that you're working in. And again, it also gives the facilitators the opportunity to kind of experience some of these activities in their own way, so they can figure out, what are maybe some of the challenges, what are some of the really great things that are going to work really, really well, and then ask those questions of those skilled facilitators. The great thing is we also have flexibility with our training of educators. We have the option of an online training or in person. I'd be happy to talk about some of those specifics and what those different options for online training and in person might look like. Then down the road, say they want to train their own staff at their own organization, we have an option for that too. That is called our TOT, or our training of trainers. And once they've gone through a TOE and have had some experience with that, they can apply to attend our TOT, and then they will have the ability to train the individuals and facilitators at their organizations. And like Jonelle said, technical assistance, we are here to help. The training team is always happy to help in terms of different delivery methods and kind of facilitation options and those adaptations that Jo was talking about in her earlier slide. With that, we're also happy to make observations and view teachbacks and provide kind of different ways to enhance their facilitation of the curriculum so that they can be that much more impactful when they are going out and working in their community with their young people. That's a taste of it. We also have a lot of other TA options that individuals on our team would be happy to provide in terms of, as Jo now mentioned, program delivery and maybe how to build those relationships and foster those relationships even further in the community, and all sorts of exciting things. But the big message here being that the Dibble Institute is always here and always happy to help in any way that we can to better serve the youth that you are working with, because that's our goal in the long run. So before we officially close out, which we have more time, don't worry, we're not leaving and going anywhere yet, I wanted to go ahead and turn it over to Kay to see if you've got anything you want to say, any questions that we might be able to answer, and all of the other good last pieces.
I'm not seeing any questions here, but I just want to reiterate that, you know, it's been, I think, 13 years since this funding became available, and many states made a choice or choices back in the day. And now we're hearing from people that they'd like to see what's new and what's updated and what might meet the needs of their young people even better than what they're doing currently. And so that's why we reached out to you. And we really are grateful that all of you were able to attend today. When you leave the webinar, you'll be getting a survey. And if you would like us to send you an online digital review copy, just check the box yes. And if there's anybody else on your team that we should include in these conversations or may want to know more, please add their name. And then there's a space if you'd like us to contact you with further information about anything else. But as Rachel and Janelle certainly epitomized, you know, we really want to support you in helping young people. Every day we get up and wonder how we can help more young people to get smart about their love lives. And so working with state prep directors is a key part of that strategy. So Janelle and Rachel, you want to pop back on and we'll all say goodbye unless there's any other questions? Great. Well, thank you very much for attending, and we'll certainly be in touch with you. Thanks so much. Goodbye.